Welcome to Disability Clinic, the fashion capital of disability advocacy. I'm Dr. Stephanie Van. I'm a Vietnamese woman with long dark hair, wearing a navy fleece and beige scrubs, sitting in front of a colorful bookshelf adorned with disability advocacy Easter eggs. Joining us today is an engineer, educator, instructional designer, and storyteller. Please welcome Sara Shunkwiler. Thank you so much for coming on and joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. So I'm Sara Shunkwiler. I'm an engineer, an educator, disability advocate. I'm an instructional designer now at Whiting School of Engineering. I really loved Emily Ladow, who said she's a storyteller. I have piles and piles of data talking about STEM equity and who's allowed in engineering and who's not. Just so many stories of real people. And I think it's important to share why advocacy matters and who are the people who are affected by what we're doing.
Absolutely. Do you want to do your audio description?
So I'm a white, cisgender, middle-aged female. I'm wearing a pink sweatshirt that says, "A day without math is like," just kidding, I have no idea. And I have my on-again, off-again hair wrapped up in 3 different scarves, one of which is a calculus scarf with these fabulous gray equations and flowers all over it that are like made out of these functions, vases,
stylish and smart.
You know, I can hear my students going, "Yes, Mrs. Shunkwiler, only you would think that is fabulous." But my background is very colorful, and I have math posters and art all over my walls, and maybe we can come back to the math poster issue later.
Why don't we start with STEM and just sort of, for those who don't know, what is STEM and what does STEM need more from the disability advocacy movement?
Why do we need advocacy? Because the engineering field, the STEM fields don't yet represent society. We don't reflect society. So there are so many students who are excluded from what we call the STEM pipeline. So that's the K-12 world, which prepares you to go on to higher education STEM careers. And also in higher ed, we still have many students who are dropping out because they don't feel welcome or they don't feel prepared in science and technology.
Yeah, so important. And I mean, in all of your experience, has there been some encouraging progress?
Yeah, there has, definitely. Although it's funny because I made a comment to one of my female faculty the other day that when I was in engineering school, I was one of 2 students in my class, and she said, "Yeah, there were 3 in mine." And she's a young faculty, so things have changed. But at the same time, I switched from engineering to education because I had worked a lot in racial, socioeconomic diversity and could see that students that I was working with in some of the inner city schools were not going to have the opportunity to go into engineering fields. And I was really blessed as a student that I had teachers who showed me that it was okay to be smart and to like math. In some ways, things have changed, but in a lot of ways, they haven't. And when I look at disabilities in particular, there's still so many obstacles for people to get into the field and then to stay in the field.
It can get really overwhelming to think about all of these challenges, but the more people we can kind of bring into the fold and teach about navigating the barriers and supporting students, the better. So thank you for all the work that you've been doing.
And I love it because I work with faculty. I work in course design in the School of Engineering. And I have had faculty who say, "But I don't have students in my class who are disabled." And it's like there are actually a few things with that. You may not know it because there's a lot of disabilities that are hidden. If students haven't been supported throughout the pipeline or we're not making our classes accessible to them in higher ed, there's a reason that they're not showing up in your class. If we are making our courses more inclusive and welcoming so that students feel comfortable there, then that's going to make a huge difference. And sometimes it's slow progress, but I remind myself progress nonetheless.
Everything counts. Every advancement is a victory that should be celebrated. Absolutely agree. In your background of course design, have you felt there's been like a central theme or like a strategy that's always like, go to this? If you're worried about the accessibility of your course, like what's sort of a reliable like focus that people can rally around?
Our team is working really hard on accessibility, doing trainings, and that there's a lot more information out there nowadays on sort of simple things that people can do, like accessibility checkers, adding alt text descriptions, which I kind of had to laugh about that because somebody asked me, how would you do an alt text description on your math poster back there? I said, well, that math poster might actually be triggering for a lot of my students because math trauma is real. It is for a lot of students, and we laugh about that. But if you have had difficult experiences in your K-12 schooling, or you have dyscalculia, which we can define what that means, but it is a real diagnosis. And sometimes for students, it's not that they have an actual math disability diagnosis, but they just haven't had access to math and science content so that they don't feel comfortable with it. So they might actually look at my poster behind me and just be like, no, thank you.
Yeah, I have a friend, actually the producer on my channel, AJ, when I mentioned that I was meeting with you and that you've done like seminars on accessible math, he was like, oh my goodness, I would be so interested in that because I think he kind of fell through the cracks of the pipeline. And, you know, he has visual disabilities and math has never been something he's felt comfortable with. It seems like at a very basic level, it's just like making math accessible to K through 12. Like I can imagine that would really open a lot of doors for kids who otherwise wouldn't feel like that was for them.
Yes, and I think it's really important to stop and think about also the mental health aspects of that, because I also work as a home hospital teacher for my local school district. So I've worked with quite a few students who have such math trauma in their background that they have been at the point of considering taking their own lives. They have mental health challenges because of their schooling. And I just want to say, and I do tell them this on a regular basis, you are so much more than your fact fluency score. You can get into a STEM field eventually if you want to. If you don't, that's totally fine too, but please don't define yourself by your math ability. And so I don't know how much the conversation about accessibility in the K-12 world has evolved. I feel like we're still somewhat new to that in higher ed, in trying to make our courses accessible. I wish we had all the answers.
But it takes problem solvers like you to kind of work through that and figure out, okay, how can we streamline this a little better and make this work better?
And we'd love to collaborate with people on that, because if we're still looking for answers on that and working to make our courses more accessible and working across Hopkins, but with outside universities as well.
And you mentioned how, the students that you've worked with have kind of devalued themselves because of their ability level, their skill level, even when, that's not necessarily inherent to them. That relies on a lot of factors like their education, their teachers. And ableism is kind of rampant throughout academia in general, and just kind of holding students to such a high standard and creating all this pressure.
We talk about the steep steps in Jay Dolmage's book about academic ableism in higher education. And it's interesting because you have an interview with Sarah Pennington on your channel recently, and I always have to think about how I'm going to introduce myself, because I wrap my head, because sometimes I have hair and sometimes I don't have hair. And I was told when I interviewed for this job that I should wear a wig because it would make me look smarter. I think you can find them
all the
video clip about that, right? But it's funny, like as somebody in engineering, you tend to hide disabilities, right? Because it's still not really accepted in higher ed and in engineering, right? So I wrote an article about that in our Faculty Forward magazine. I talked about the fact that it's, do I disclose or do I not disclose? And students have the same issue. Do they ask for accommodations that they might need, or do they not? Because, in STEM fields, there is still a stigma about that. But one of our faculty wrote me a note and said, it's important to be a role model, that our students need us to step up and be role models. So that's when I got my t-shirt that said disabled is not a bad word. Trust me, I know all of them.
I also have the sweatshirt from Diversibility. Very nice.
Yeah, I love it. And she said, we need role models. We need to know that faculty have disabilities. We need to know that engineers have disabilities, that STEM professionals do, and we're capable. It's not that we succeeded because we had help or that we may need that, but we also are perfectly capable.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you got positive feedback, embracing the fact that, it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there and say, maybe I'm the first one saying this, or I'm the first one kind of with this unpopular opinion. But at the same time, that brings people out, that it can be such a lonely experience feeling like you're the only one, or, no one else really understands what you're going through. And then to be able to reach out and connect and realize there's so many people out there who get inspired by your perspective and look up to that. I think that's very powerful. So thank you for putting yourself out there. We need more representation of disabled faculty. If you enjoyed this conversations and want to hear more conversations like this, hit that like button and subscribe to Disability Clinic for more accessible and educational content. As always, thank you for watching, listening, and learning.
She blinded me with science.